Maureen, you believe that in the next, I don't know, 3 to 5 years, there's actually going to be no physical humans doing transaction coordination. It's actually going to be AI.
2024 is the year to start it all. What we're doing with our sidekick is creating that experience. And being that I was in TC for a long time, I just knew that with artificial intelligence, it allowed us to really look at the transaction and say, we can use AI to streamline 97% of what a TC does.
Yeah, because what I'm aware of, having processed like 2,000 transactions in my real estate career, I know that the majority of transaction coordination is kind of rote repetition, right? Where there's like, let's say an SOP, a standard operating procedure that people follow, and you can hand that to a TC, a human, and they can just kind of go down the checklist. And it makes logical sense that, artificial intelligence, because it doesn't get tired, doesn't get sick, doesn't get angry, doesn't want more money per transaction, can work all the time and monitor everything all the time, would actually do that job better. Is it?
Yeah.
Are you in agreement with that?
So we started this. So 5 years ago, just so you know, we created the first machine learning part of California transaction coordination, reading of the forms. And the software's been out there. Just think of banking, right? You deposit a check with your phone, right? And so there was machine learning going on, and we actually were using it. But what we found was agents, it still wasn't at a level that our AI allows us to program and create and get rid of all those tasks. And so what's going to happen, as you know, doing all those transactions and what's going on in the industry, there's a lot going on in the industry that opened up tech. Okay. So we're going to have the ability. It's really amazing what's going to happen with transactions, because those tasks that a TC did, also every agent is different. So every agent has their own way of doing business. And with artificial intelligence, it's learning their preferences. And just like before, if you used a company, like Transaction Desk, Zip Forms, in there you create templates, right, for your contracts, let's just say. And the contracts can now be those preferences that you have as an agent can be utilized in applications like ours that actually can learn and do the task for you based on those preferences. And it can be learned. And it can also be programmed in there as well, where the agent goes in just like you would use a template in Zip Forms. And you would say, on all my contracts, I want these things. Now with AI, it can all be learned based off of agents' behavior. So it's going to be very interesting to see who really takes this to the next level. We have just been having a great time doing it. And we have this group of agents that are getting it. And I mean, 2024 is going to be a blast. I mean, I just can't wait to see what comes out.
That's awesome. And one of the things I wrote down here is that SOP, that what we would call standard operating procedure, which is a fancy word for like a checklist, that can be customizable, right? Because a lot of agents say like, hey, I want to do it my particular way or the way I like to do it, which is fine. Now you can use software essentially to customize your preferences and kind of go down this task list, independent of you being present or even kind of watching over it. Is that accurate?
Yeah. I mean, so you're still going to have, so like in programming, okay, you have a database and you got to put all those preferences, those checklists in there. I mean, somewhere it has to be captured that for your particular brokerage, you need this checklist, right? And so you need all these documents by law. It's changing a lot though, because when I first started this, you could talk to the Department of Real Estate in California or talk to anyone for the legal ramifications of forms, and they're all going to change because as people move away from associations or don't, then it's going to open up a lot of different things for the real estate agent on how they do their forms, and actually could make it easier. So the whole job of my company when I first started was to make the job of the agent easy and the TC easy. And that's where we came down this journey over the last 7 years is we need to make real estate easier for the buyer and seller as well. So I think with these checklists and these SOPs, you're going to see that they're going to be shortened. And from a very much of a legal standpoint, I think agents, we're going to have like in our own platform, we're going to have attorneys where the client can actually converse with attorneys about their contracts, which is going to be really cool because that takes the onus off of the agent or the client going and trying to get, because the agent shouldn't be explaining forms, right? They're not attorneys. So it's important that they get to spend their time servicing their clients, selling, focusing on things that are really, really important to building their business, their marketing, their, staying in touch with their clients. And that's one of the things I think is really, really important. I was just speaking at an EXP event in Cocoa Beach, and I was talking about lead generation, and I was talking about the importance of your database, and that your database as an agent is a gold mine. And that was one of the very first things I read in when I started in the real estate industry, The Millionaire Agent, right? And the first thing is getting your database in line and making sure that you are constantly in touch with your clients in some way or another. And it was interesting to hear. I had maybe 50 people in the room, and I asked, how many of you work your database on a consistent basis? And no one raised their hand. And I was like, wow, you guys, you are missing out. And with AI, that's where the focus of the agent should be, is building their business and then taking these TC type tasks and using AI tools to do it for them instead of them doing it. And when you started in your career, because I know you weren't always in real estate, right? Or were you?
Always, yes. Every time I graduated.
Oh yeah, that's right. Right out of college, right? Okay. Well, I wasn't. But when you think about your job in life, sometimes there's things that are busy stuff, right? I look at paperwork as busy stuff for agents. They feel like they're working, but that's not really where they should be focusing. And they're not really that good at it. That's why we have to have the second set of eyes. And now with AI, and I don't know, I want to talk about ChatGPT for a minute and DALL-E, the imaging, if you don't mind. The imaging is getting unbelievable. So right now in our platform, we built in the OCR part, the machine learning part, and we have AI, and we're testing it against each other right now. So our beta testers are putting in contracts, and it's reading it, and it's amazing the accuracy of it. And it's just going to get better. I mean, it really is just going to get better.
And what I'm writing down as you're speaking to me is a few things. Like one, I think there's which is what you're alluding to as far as perhaps people not being a part of associations or, agents. There's a very good probability. Nobody has kind of exacts. At the same time, I like to think of things in probabilities because that's really more accurate. Right. I think there's like a 70% chance that fundamentally the way that agents conduct business is going to change in the next 3 to 5 years due to various different things. One being, the commission lawsuit, how that has implications with NAR. We see all of these other kind of latch-on lawsuits, which could end up bankrupting NAR. And if that does happen, what you're referring to with a high degree of probability will take place is that brokers and agents will no longer be a part of associations. And as such, that fundamental change is going to require that agents pivot. And something that I have a high-level mastermind group that I run, and something I said to them recently is that leaders anticipate and everybody else reacts. So what me and Maureen are talking about right now is anticipation of what's to come with a very high degree of probability. So if you are listening to this and you're like, I'm not going to pay attention to it, do that at your own peril, because I think with a very high degree of probability, this will be part of the landscape. It also makes sense where when you look at statistics, over the last 5-10 years, there's been a massive compression of net in the real estate industry. As far as, I read a stat that 50 years ago, company retained dollar to brokers was 50%. Now it's between 10 to 13%.
I
And
know.
what they're all doing is trying to figure out ways to reduce staff and space, because those are the two biggest expenses. And this reduces staff, right? So it just logically fits in. It's like a logical puzzle piece. The thing that I'm interested in, because, I've had a coaching company for like 10 years now. And, this concept of income servicing versus income producing, and that those two things are different. And you alluded to that, right? Like, so I tell people PLAN, prospect, lead, follow-up, go on appointments, negotiate deals. Those are the only things that pay you money. Everything else should be outsourced. Now, even though conceptually that's like easy to understand. Everybody walks out there like, oh yeah, am I following my plan? Like, yeah, that's catchy. I know most of what ails us are behavior issues. Most of what ails society are behavioral things. Yeah. So the question is what would you say to agents that are like, I don't feel comfortable letting go of that? Because what I find is, even in our industry now that we have humans that can do that, the vast majority of agents still don't use transaction coordinators. They hover over deals and hold on to each and every one and want to be involved in each kind of step in the process, because underneath is a fear. 65% of us grew up in families that live paycheck to paycheck. And because of that, we heard things like money doesn't grow on trees, eat all the food on your plate, and a penny saved is a penny earned. And if you want to do something right, you need to do it yourself. So I find that mentally, even so what would you say to agents that are listening to this? Because what I feel like this moment is, Maureen, I remember, I'm dating myself. There was a time when I was actually physically and viscerally uncomfortable putting my credit card into a computer. Where now, I don't even think about it. We swipe watches, we Zelle, like, you don't even think about it, right? So I feel like this is one of those moments. So what would you say to that agent that's like, I don't know, like, I don't even feel comfortable handing it over to a human, much less artificial intelligence?
I would say artificial intelligence is more accurate than a human. And I know, just based off of our machine learning part, that the accuracy of finding errors in the documents for an agent prior to it going out to their client or prior to going to the other side, that accuracy was about at 87% when I first started this product 5 years ago. And now that wasn't even full AI deep thinking, right? So it's going to be, and I would say if you have a fear of this, you need to look back at things. Like in my AI boot camp at the very first session, I talk about the history of, could you imagine not having a refrigerator? Okay. But there was a point in our life that we didn't have a refrigerator, right? Could you imagine not having your cell phone? Okay. And people were afraid, right? And people were afraid of electricity. They were afraid of radio, television. Television, I don't think is as much fear, but there's always been fear associated with things. And yes, there is good and bad, right? I mean, I remember, and I'm dating myself now, but when I was in college, I worked my way through college in Dallas, and I was doing a project where I was actually designing from scratch an accounting system in business, right? And in one of my courses, it was the beginning of, not very beginning, but when Paul Allen and Bill Gates said the PC was going to make your lives easier. Well, I believe it made our work easier. But it also made us work more. Remember when the BlackBerry came out and we were tied, and now we're tied to these phones? So there's good and bad with everything. Well, and plus what we're going to show in our platform, phase 3, is the client. So when you get the client involved, just like the lender, let's talk about lending. I've been through a lending process where I met my lender, I filled out the paperwork, and then he handed it off to a processor. He never talked to me again regarding the paperwork. Then I went into a portal, and inside the portal, I had all the signing and all the things. And then they prompted me via email, some processor, right, saying, hey, don't forget, you're only 86% complete on your forms. That's what we're doing with AI for real estate agents and the clients. We're creating the AI portal where people are being prompted automatically to remind them hey, you got to get this done. Your inspection contingency in Florida is expiring. All these things are going to be prompted to make the agent look like a rock star, and it's going to be done for them. And I don't know if you ever watched the October OpenAI did Dev Day. It was the great, watch it on YouTube. Sam Altman got on there and he talked about, they did a summary of their Dev Day, and he talked about how tasks can be done, and he showed the task being done live on stage. And so that means like update my account to reflect that I got 500 tokens. Okay. And he showed how everyone in the audience account got updated.
So I was writing down a few things as you were speaking. I saw Obama was talking that he did an interview where he knows people that are, very big in the tech world, tons of money. And he was asking him, so like, what's the deal with this AI thing? Like, what do you think? And he's like, and the person was like, well, I was sitting down with my team and the best analogy we could come up with was electricity. And if you think about the kind of impact that electricity had, whether it be just heating and cooling in your house, refrigeration, like all these things need electricity. That's it's a quantum leap as far as, humanity was concerned, right? So they're comparing it. People who are in that space are comparing it to that. The second thing I wrote down, because you said there's always fear, knowledge equals confidence and ignorance equals fear. So one of the things that I think if your mind's open enough and you're persistent, you can get anything you want in life. The challenge is like, I think knowing something and using it makes us feel safe. And anything new is perceived dangerous. That's why there's this it's dangerous, it's bad, you need to stay away from it. But you have to resist that temptation. And something I share with coaching clients all the time is ask yourself, 5 years from now, your future self, what does that version of you wish that they learned about today? And that's a really good kind of frame of reference, right? Because I think if you read 5 books on the topic, you'll know more than 95% of the population. So this is something to learn about and pay attention. Because I know you said some things like AI, you said some things like deep learning, and I'm aware that they're different. I'm also aware that the vast majority of people have no idea that they're different. So I would propose that, people, or the difference between language-based learning and, not, which are completely different, right? One is you have to program, it's like if then, the other one is it learns as more data and information is given to it. It gets kind of smarter over time, right? And how impactful that is. I'm curious, right? So what I've learned is high tech without high touch doesn't work. There's a disconnect, right? So I'm very clear. I think some people think, I've seen them do it with lead gen, where they're like, oh, I could just automate everything and I never have to talk to anybody. I'm like, yeah, that's not going to work. Yeah. Because it's a people business. You know what I'm saying? I have to be in the presence of people, and there's a human component to it. I see people do this with lead gen for deals or units. I see them do it with agent attraction. They think oh, if I get this CRM and I just drip and email and do bomb videos, I'll be great. And I'm like, that's probably not going to work, right? Because high tech without high touch doesn't work. So I'm very clear that AI can automate rote repetition and and do a much better job, right, than humans can, because humans get tired, they get sick, they're cranky, they're hangry, we have biases, we have limits to our understanding of things, so it'll do a better job and be more accurate. I understand that. The question is in your vision, how do you see the human component interacting with the technical component?
3 major things that NAR came out with, and I talked about this in the workshop I did, was that agents disliked the most was lead generation, paperwork. Paperwork was tied with dealing with conflict, with communicating with clients. And so I think when you talk about relationships, the relationship is always going to be there. And what agents need to realize is they need to focus on those relationships in a different way. Those tasks, like you're saying, they're going away. but there's still a high level of emotions involved in a transaction, a high level of all the different marketing pieces and keeping the client involved. And then we have to look at different generations. So when you look at the younger generation who are completely into tech, you're thinking, okay, I'm thinking that younger people will come into this space because I find the space right now where I came into it a long time ago and it was very antiquated. I mean, if you think about it, I couldn't believe WIN forms. Okay. And originally WIN forms then became zip forms, but people were still tied to paper. And I was like, this is insane. And but the older generation of realtors are going to have to really, it's rapidly changing. And if you can't get into technology, forget it, right? But the younger people are going, this is really cool. Like, and I think when you get the client involved, see, I envision, and I've always envisioned this, and I actually taught some agents, this was really fun, about virtual open houses using some AI tools. And I think keeping your client engaged more so, like even if you were sitting right next to them and you had your iPad and you were showing them their portal and you actually did your listing right there with your iPad and you said, now look, this is your own portal. You can see everything. You can see the chats we're doing. You can see the videos that I have created to explain anything about the real estate business. And it can be personalized in our portal, or it can be standardized. And then you can see all your requirements, like all your deadlines. And the problem is that nobody has given the client access. And that's what's going to change. And that's what's going to bring the agent and the client talking. I mean, I would say the first company that has something like it is Brivity. Okay. And I remember when Ben Kinney years ago was showing his product and we were using it just to try it out. And you could engage the client a little bit in it. And I think it's still kind of antiquated now, but I'm sure he's going to pivot on his product. And there's plenty of space out there for everybody to be involved in this. So I think client agents just need to look at it as saying the relationship's always going to be there. They have to have the emotion part of it. But there's stuff that we can automate that actually from the client standpoint and the agent standpoint, these are tasks that really do need to go away from a manual standpoint. We're way too antiquated.
Yeah, and I agree with you. You know, I like to tell people, like, how is it that we live in a world where I can order something on my phone from Chipotle? They'll tell me that it's being made. They'll tell me that it's on the way, 5 minutes away, and then they'll tell me that's in front of my door, but nobody can tell me when closing is. That's strange, right? So it's very much so ripe for disruption. What I'm also aware of is that I read a book called Being Mortal, and it's a very good book for anybody who has parents that are older. And this individual, he's a, kind of top of his field. He's a neurosurgeon, which has to go to school for the longest. Plus he teaches,
Right.
PhD, like all that. But what it was talking about, one of the main things that I took from that book is he was saying that as physicians, they're really taught to solve problems, even when the solution to the problem could cause the person to have a lower quality of life. So they will solve problems all the way up until, somebody just says, stop, right? And they're not really taught the soft skills, right? And he was saying that there's like 3 types of forms of communicating if you look through the medical field. And I believe that it's completely applicable to what we're experiencing now. It used to be that nobody had access to any information as far as medical stuff is concerned. So you would go to the doctor, you'd be like, my stomach hurt. They would hand you a Coke, tap you on the head and be like, see you later. Like they wouldn't explain anything to you. It's like, just what it is, right? Get out of here.
Yeah.
Then we got the internet. And with the internet now, you get WebMDs, you get all this other stuff. So then with lawsuits and stuff, they were like, you know what? Here's all the information. You decide. And what's interesting about that is we actually don't want that either. What we want is interpretive. which is more like, hey, here's all the information. I'm going to ask you a series of questions so that way I'm clear on where you're at in terms of how you're feeling and what you feel comfortable with. I'll go over with you the options that you have at your disposal, and whatever you decide, I'll support you 100%. If you would like my kind of, expertise or guidance, just ask. That's actually what we want. We want an interpretive. So before there was just books, no MLS. Just imagine that. People listening, there used to be a book with listings,
I don't remember
and no
that.
human on planet Earth had any information. Yeah, they had no information about real estate, like none. Zero, zip, zilch. Like you didn't know what your neighbor's house sold for. You didn't know what was on the market. Like nothing. You had to go to an agent. Well, the internet comes along and it takes away that value proposition. So now we're no longer gatekeepers of information, right? Yeah. So that changed. And yet you still have a lot of people posting one-dimensional pictures of properties that they can find online. Like, what are you doing? That's not valuable information. You still have people presenting from an authoritative way. Like, well, I study homes and prices every day. I'm like, bro, do you realize that homeowner is studying that home every single day? They're hitting the refresh button because the majority of Americans have the majority of their net worth tied up into their house. Yet you're presenting like you're an authority and you know better than them. That's stupid. That no longer is the world that we live in. It doesn't exist anymore, right?
Right.
So what I'm hearing is, so we're experiencing that same type of evolution here, right, in our space. So, and the reason I was bringing up the communication piece is because what I wrote down, and in that book, what he said is in the future, there will, because people go to school for extended periods of time to become physicians. Really what they're being trained in is pattern recognition. It's really what it is. So it's like, oh, you have this symptom, this symptom, this symptom. There's an 85% chance it is this. Well, guess what? Yeah. AI does that better. It does it way better than humans do. So he said in the future, what medicine will be is AI, a human, and a dog. And here's what it was. The AI is going to take all of the data and all the information that has been presented as far as all of your tests and blood work and scans and everything, and with pinpoint accuracy, much better than a human can, be like, yo, this is probably what it is. What the human's going to be there to do is to walk you through the soft skills, leadership, guidance, encouragement. Here's the plan. Like, here's how here's what we're going to do. Do you know what the dog's for? So the human doesn't screw with the AI. That's the direction, right? So I want everybody who's watching this, who's an agent, is we have to reframe our value proposition. Like, you think your value is like doing paperwork. It's not. You think your value is like telling them what's available. It's not. You think your value is like opening a door. No, not really. It's not valuable, right? If that's what you're doing, you're probably not making a bunch of money because it's not that valuable. So we have to reframe the way that we're seeing this. And what I wrote down is AI will do the paperwork. That's what Maureen's company does. Like, okay, great. And it'll do it better than you with better accuracy. But what you said was interesting to me, that most agents don't like conflict. Well, they're in the wrong business then. Because this is a business rife with conflict. We think that we are thinking beings that feel. We are really feeling beings that think. Most people have the majority of their network tied up into their house, and because of that, they're like this. And they don't want to let go of a penny, right? So there's always going to be conflict. So what's emerging for me is the agent of the future will, A, understand AI. Surface level, you don't have to be like a PhD in it. You need to understand it and use it and have it integrated into your CRM. B, you need to be world-class communicator, because that's actually the skill that's valuable. Just like for the physician, the skill that will be valuable is no longer pattern recognition. The skill that will be valuable is the soft skill that AI can't do of human to human, empathy, right? Like sympathy, like encouragement, like, that's what's actually going to be valuable.
I do believe that. It's the communication part. It's interesting because I've been in sales all my life, some capacity or some, and that's the best part of the job, is communicating and loving your client. And that's how my client now is an agent, right? And that's what I love, is hearing what they have to say, what pain points they have, good things that have happened in their business. I talk to my clients, especially our club members, very much often because I want that feedback from them. And for an agent, you got to love being with people because you're doing showing homes, you're doing, you're showing a property, and that's the piece you really have to love is communicating. And then all the other stuff makes you more just efficient and makes you look like you're an amazing agent because you got it together. And
it's funny because as I hear you saying that, it's like, I think you have to be good at it. I'm not entirely convinced I need to love it. Like, people tell me, they're like, I just love people. Well, I hear people, they're like, well, I just love people. I'm like, bro, you haven't spent enough time with enough people. Like, you know what I mean? Like, right? Yeah. So I think what's important is for agents to recognize conflict's never going away. You're never going to get rid of that. Never. Like AI will help you with streamlining, right? It's unbelievable to me, Maureen, how many agents don't even use a calendar, like a Google Calendar, like completely by the seat of their pants. They have no SOPs. And what I tell them is if you don't have a system, you are the system. You're wondering why you stay stuck at moderate levels of production is because you're basically, when everybody says, they're like, well, Maureen, I don't like technology. You know what I hear when they say that? I don't like money. That's what I hear when they say that to me. It's like, how can you make sense of that? So it's like, again, if we're painting a picture of the agent of the future, somebody who's a world-class communicator, like top-notch, tip-top skills. 2, they either outsource technology to companies like yours. They have a general understanding, just generally how it works. I don't need to go deep down the well. They use a CRM, not just for lead gen, but for actually a platform to build your business on top of that has SOPs and all this stuff that can make you super efficient. I mean, that's the agent of the future. It's somebody who uses technology to take away tasks that are low level. And again, I mean this lovingly and respectfully to TCs, right. But it's like, it's lower level tasks that are lower dollar amount.
Well, look at it this way. I'm going to make it really simple. I look at my time. I work all the time. I'm launching an AI application. It's a life job, right? It takes my life. I'm not wasting my time going into the grocery store. I do on Instacart and I do Amazon. And I'm okay with that because I look at it, my time is more valuable and I love to cook. So I cook at home, okay? But I am not going to the grocery store. Why would I do that? That's like going down to the Red Box and getting your DVD instead of streaming it. I can't wait to show you see my infomercial that's coming out this weekend because we're talking about that. We're talking about the future of AI in real estate. It's amazing. I just saw the preview this morning with the editor, and I am super excited because you have to look at your time too. And agents that are great communicators, they're going to spend the time with their clients. They're going to be communicating. They're going to be involved in their communities, whatever it is that they like to do. And they're going to be known as, wow, this guy or gal has it really together. And they're going to actually they're going to hit the jackpot. The agents, there's going to be a lot of agents out of this business in the next 3 years. A lot. And those who really love being in real estate, because like, for example, there is emotion involved in it. There is conflict. I mean, whether you're doing commercial's really complex, right? Or you're dealing with somebody that's selling their house because they're going through a divorce, right? Or one of their family members passed and they had a bunch of properties they have to sell. So we're never going to get away from that. But I definitely think all these things that you're talking about, I'm talking about CRMs, using as much as you can AI to automate those tasks and creating what we want to do in our platform is through our vendor marketplace is we want to create so that the agents can do those gifts, to do those things, to put them on autopilot, right? And we're teaming up with vendors all around the country that get it, that they know that this can all these tasks can be automated. And not all of it will be AI, okay? But a large percentage will be AI. Here's just a little teaser for you, Aaron.
Good.
Oh, I was just going to say there's just like a prompt that we have for inspections. Can you imagine not having to coordinate and make a phone call to everybody where you can just say, would you like your client to receive these 3 inspectors to schedule their inspection? And you send it. And the client says, yeah, I want to go with that one. Then it automatically contacts them, the inspector, with a text message. Says, we need an inspection. What 2 days do you have available next week, or blah, blah, blah. And it's a prompt. And it comes back and it goes to all the parties, both agents and the seller and the buyer. We've just eliminated a big headache in the industry.
Yeah, and what I'm aware of is when you shave down, that might take 10 minutes, but if you multiply that out over, millions of transactions, you're saving a tremendous amount of time. And then the question is what do you fill that time with? So I was listening to a podcast, Michael Del Prete. I'm sure you have heard of him. He does a very good job of analyzing data. He has no skin in the game. He's not a broker or agent, but he can present it in a clear and concise way that's easily digestible. And he had Glenn Sanford on, the founder of EXP. And Glenn was saying, in the next 3 to 5 years, there's a very good chance that fundamentally the way we do business is going to change. And he said a lot of agents won't have the capacity or the bandwidth to pivot, which is precisely what you just said. You were like, a lot of agents are going to go away. And I think most agents think that they'll go away due to a lack of income, which is a natural attrition. I think it's 70% of all agents getting a license within a year are out, and 80% in 5 years are doing something else. I always love when I'm prospecting. They're like, I used to have my license. I'm like, you weren't that good at it. You're not doing it anymore. You know what I'm saying? It's always interesting to me. It's like, we didn't make that much money, otherwise you'd still be doing it. So, but what I think is interesting is I'm not convinced that it'll be due to a lack of deal. It's due to a lack of keeping up with the changes. Because I think as consumers, we have become technology has trained us. My expectation is everything needs to be immediate. That's my expectation. My expectation is I do know when Chipotle is making my thing, and I refresh it every 2 seconds to see if it's cooked and if it's on the way and that's the expectation. The expectation is if I call a company and they don't pick up, I move on to something else. The expectation is that if buttons don't work on websites, I move on to something else. It's very fast, right? So I think the reason why agents will go away is due to perhaps an unwillingness or not having the ability to pivot and not be able to give the service that customers are requiring, because technology has trained us to require speed, immediacy, efficiency, right away.
It is. I do. I think when I look back just 7 years in this journey, and I think of all the changes that have happened, I think in the last year, it's exponentially changed. And when you talk about the data, right, that you were reading about, agents have to realize that the data is just going to get better and better. And we're going to be able to know things before they even happen. I mean, just completely. I was looking at some applications out there that were just so cool, right? In managing and creating lead gen, just using data and trends. I can't wait to see all the trends coming out, right? And I want to point one last thing on data. Look back at how many house sales. Did we ever stop in the United States ever buying or selling a home? Never. There was never 1 year where it was zero. And, I hear this from agents too. Oh, the market's crazy. California, all my agents are saying stuff like, oh, we're just hurting so bad. I go, we're back to normal. Look at the stats over the years. So you are not doing your job and getting your piece of the pie.
100%. So when I was out in, my business partner with EXP, he's in Oxnard, California, and I've flown out there a couple of times and done talks with him. And I was there in 2022, and then I went back in 2023, and we looked at stats, and listings were down, 25%, and sales were down about the same, 25, 30%. But if your production is dropping in direct correlation to the market, that means that the market was actually driving your growth, not you. Those are called the facts, as Jim Rohn would say. So like what we're really bemoaning is like easy. That's what we're bemoaning. Like, oh, what was easy? Like, 3% money, everybody's buying.
On that point, Aaron, agents have to realize too, is that if they look at what they're doing every day, they have to look at what they're focused on 100%. And you got to get your share of it. Otherwise you're focusing on the wrong thing.
Yeah, 100%. Now, what's interesting is as we're talking, what just popped up to the surface is that, I can tell if I'm in a room of like 500 agents, I'm doing a talk and I say, hey, PLA and prospect lead follow-up, go on appointments, negotiate deals. I just want you to take in your little notebook and don't lie. This only works where, nobody's going to judge you here, right? Mm-hmm. This only works if you're honest. What percentage of your time do you spend in those activities? And it's usually like 10%. Now, I can tell you with pretty close accuracy, if you're spending 10% of your time doing that, you're probably doing 10 deals a year. If you're spending 20% of your time doing that, you're probably doing 20 deals a year, and so on and so forth. But what I'm aware of is that what they're filling it with is busy work that's actually not productive, which is paperwork or going to inspections or going to I'm like, they meet the photographer. I'm like, hey, bro, are you a professional photographer? What the hell are you doing there? Like, why are you there? Are you a home inspector? Why are you there? They're going to send you a report. Like, what are you doing? Right? So what's interesting is AI is actually going to, for agents, is going to free up a lot of time. Now, the question is what are you going to fill that time with? You have two choices, in my opinion. One is do more deals, do more prospecting, do more lead follow-up, go on appointments, and do more transactions. Number two is do stuff you like. Go play golf, go play pickleball, like go do something else.
I had an agent lady come up to one of our booths in California last year, and she said, I don't want to do more deals. I want to have time to go do shopping. I want to buy shoes. And I was like, that's great. Because I love to hear that, because a lot of times agents go on vacation and they're constantly working, and it's really not vacation. And one of the things I learned on my own journey, I hadn't taken a vacation in 3 years, and I finally did. And I only went for 7 days and I did nothing. I went off the grid. I had to refresh because we were getting ready to launch. And I told my head of product, I said, I'm going off the grid. I'm not checking an email. First time in 3.5 years. And it was glorious. And I came back and everything started happening. Everything that I was manifesting, everything I wanted to have happen is happening. And it got better. So if I could say to anything for agents, one, streamline your processes, use AI, focus on being a better communicator, like you said, and go on a vacation where you don't answer your phone. You have someone else answer it. And also, I do want to do a little plug for a product. Can I do that? Because it's an AI product. They won the IOI Summit pitch battle. Like, we won the pitch battle in Miami at Rock the Market. Joseph, is the founder or co-founder of Productive.ai. And it is super cool. It's managing tasks on the whole thing with the client, being a better communicator. And it goes across other industries. It's not even just real estate. So he originally didn't do this just for real estate, but real estate is booming on it. And I love it. I had him as a guest speaker in one of my boot camps. And I think agents should look at that, because that's a tool. You could probably look into this too, Aaron, because it'd be great for you to, like when you're coaching, like look at it, and they have a free trial, and it keeps you on task for everything related to your phone. They have a patent. So it's really cool. And that's what we have to do. We have to find tools that are going to keep us, we would never think now to go to the red box. I mean, I know some people probably do because they're still there, but we would never think, like, there's so many tools out there. I have a list of tools from our boot camp that we talk about. Especially like the virtual open houses now, that these things, are going to be amazing. I think they're going to be the tools that are going to come out for finding the accuracy of a kitchen.
It's interesting because I was having a conversation with, again, that high-level mastermind. They have to do like $750,000 in GCI a year to be in the group.
Okay.
And there's about 10, 11 people in that group. And what I was telling them is I was reading in a book, 10x is easier than 2x. So 2x is just like incrementally more. It's just doing whatever you're doing, but like harder and faster. But it leads to incremental gains. And we have this whole like hustle culture, and I think it's particularly pervasive in real estate. Like, I'm just going to grind it out. Like, Well, the thing with that is, again, it's linear. 10x, like quantum leaps, require different strategies, different techniques, different approaches, different mental maps, different vehicles, right? Because you can't work 10x harder. I'm going to say that again for everybody who's like, what? You can't work 10x harder. It's not how it works. You need leverage. And there's 4 types of leverage on the planet. One is labor. It's the lowest form of leverage because labor gets tired, it gets sick, it quits, it wants more money, it changes companies, like all that, right? But it's better than having none. And in the past, that was, okay, you have a TC, that's human leverage, right? You have a listing coordinator, great, that's human leverage. You have buyer's agents, that's human leverage. But again, you just become a manager of humans. It's like a trap, right? The second highest form of leverage is money, capital, right? Where you can invest money. If I invest in an apartment building, it works 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, never gets sick, never gets tired, works all the time. That's why it's superior to labor, right? There's these new forms of leverage, though, that are much more powerful than those other two. And I think it was Archimedes that said, if you give me a lever that's long enough, I can move the earth. You give me a lever that's long enough and a place to stand, I can move the earth. So these levers are what the richest people on the planet have used in the last 30 years to do what it took 200 years for people who just use labor and capital. And the first one is media. It's what we're doing today. It works 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But anywhere there's internet connection, it's not limited geographically and where it can go.
Right.
But the real value in it is that the audience compounds. It keeps getting bigger over time. That's the real value. The highest form, though, is software. It's code, and it's what we're talking about. Because code has no geographic borders or boundaries. But here's the interesting part, and what makes it very profitable, is that it costs almost no money to duplicate or replicate once it's been created once. So if you look at the richest people on the planet, Zuckerberg, code, Bezos, code, Elon, code, like Ellison, code, it's all software. So the reason why I bring that up is that I think this is also forcing agents to like level up. I think it's good for the consumer because the consumer gets a better qualified, more savvy, better communicating, like business savvy individual, right? So if you want to see a qualitative change in your life, add leverage to it. Because we don't live in a world of rich and poor. We don't live in a world of haves and have-nots. We live in a world of people who have leverage and people who don't. Period. The reason why you are not able to go on vacation and not work is because you have zero leverage. That's why. Right? You have no leverage with labor, no leverage with money. You have no leverage you don't have any leverage. Like that's the whole thing, right? So what we're talking about and what I really love that you're bringing to the table is you're thinking about having come from that industry and really gone through that journey yourself of just working all the time, is saying like, wait a minute, like there's a way that we can use software, which is what artificial intelligence is, and integrate it into what we're doing. And it gives us leverage that gives us margin. Because I think what's happened in our industry is traditional success is like working 70 hours a week and having no life and getting divorced and fucking having somebody else raise your kids. Like that's what it is.
Yeah.
And that's kind of wild because we put people on stage and give them strokes and accolades for gross and units. But like nobody asked you, hey, how's your family life? What's your health life like? How much do you net? Haha, that's a novel concept. How much you actually keep in? Right?
Yeah.
Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, we don't know what is your marriage like? We don't know what their quality of life is like. So the reason why I'm excited about integrating technology and learning about it is because what it does is it adds margin to your life. Margin with time, margin because you can reclaim time, all these calls you don't have to make anymore, all these things you don't have to do. Margin with money because you don't have to pay TC $500 a file, and margin with energy. Because now I'm not spending all of this energy on this activity and I can focus it on other things. So
Yeah.
I think it's awesome. I love that you are combining two things, which is your knowledge of real estate and transactions and software, because that's how you create value, is by combining two things, kind of together. So if people are interested, if they want to get a demo, if they want to check you out, where should they go?
Realcheeky.com. And there's a early access list. So I forgot to mention our app is free.
Awesome.
Agents get it for free. And they can sign up and they can go on our early access list, and we're rolling everyone out. Miami MLS is going to be getting it at the end of the month. And a lot of EXP people are on it too. So already, because we're beta testing, but realcheeky.com.
I love it. So if you're listening, you want to check it out, I highly recommend you go check it out. Maureen, I appreciate you taking the time. If I can help you or be of assistance in any way, just let me know.
All right. Thanks, Aaron. Have a good day.
There's actually a lead source, Jose, that is completely independent of market conditions. Doesn't matter if the marketplace is going up, down, sideways.